many reasons why people train in martial arts. Some enjoy the physical challenge of learning a new skill. Some want to learn self-defense or how to fight. Others just get inspired by a movie. But there's another category as well, those who are looking for different answers. These are people who have had terrible things happen to them in the past. They may have been victims of violent crime, sexual assault, other forms of terrible violence. The memories of those horrible events often can haunt those people. For them, their sense of self-confidence, their self-belief, their self-worth, all have been stolen from them. That is my category. I know this is strange. As a martial arts instructor, I think I'm almost required to tell you how tough I am, or how my training has turned me into an unbeatable weapon, that the confidence radiating from me sends attackers fleeing in terror. But I am none of those things. I don't consider myself particularly tough. I'm certainly not unbeatable. And frankly, if I'd spent all those years going to the gym instead of training in Wing Chun, then the person you see in front of you would be far more intimidating to attackers than what I am today. So what was the point of all that training? By those measures, I guess you could say I've wasted the last 25 years of my life training Wing Chun. But those are not the measures that I use. And I don't think that I've wasted the last 25 years of my life. More importantly, here's why I'll do the same for the next 25 years at least, ensuring that the particular way that we practice is preserved. I'll do so because for some people, myself included, Wing Chun can save your life, but not in the way that you might think. It can save you because through it, you can discover that you don't have to become a different person. You are fine just the way you are. You can just be you. That's a really important message for some people, as it was for me. And that's why I'm making this video, because it may make a difference to someone out there. What do I mean? Well, let me take you back a bit. For myself, struggling to overcome the dark times of my past, I started out on this journey to learn martial arts. In part to prevent those things from ever happening to me again, and in truth also to answer the voices in my head, the ones at night in my nightmares asking, what is wrong with you? Why couldn't you stop it? Well, couldn't you have done something different? So I set out to start learning martial arts. And I think those are the very first baby steps of overcoming your fears, breaking free from the prison that your mind constructs for you. Because when you've been traumatized and had your confidence shattered, it takes courage to go out and learn something new, especially a physical challenge like martial arts. I know how nervous you can feel stepping into a training hall for the first time. Often the scariest thing is the instructor. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Napoleon Dynamite and Rex Kwon Do. It wasn't always like that, but in my experience it often was. Now bow to your sensei! Now, fighting ability doesn't come easily to me, but as part of the toughening process in some of the schools I trained in, if I couldn't do a technique right, the instructor would just come up and bellow, "Again! Just do this, and then do this," he would say, and it will work. And I used to think to myself, well, I'm sure it works for you. You're like 3 times my size, and you're so scary looking. Frankly, I don't think anyone picks on you, even if you didn't do martial arts. So I'm not you. How am I going to make it work for me? Then there was this nagging feeling that I was reliving the past all over again. It was my fault. I wasn't good enough. I was looking for answers, but the only answer I was given was push harder, build yourself up, transform yourself into a fighting machine. So in a sense, the message in the training hall was often the same as the voice of self-loathing inside my mind. If you were tougher, this wouldn't be happening to you. It's your fault because you're you. If you weren't you, if you were someone else, then all this would never happen. I knew that I was just fooling myself despite a few years of training. It really did my self-confidence no favors. Technically, I was proficient, got some belts, but against anyone bigger and stronger than me, my higher belt ranking really meant very little when it came to sparring. I used to get so depressed when I thought that was just the way the world was. I'm not a tough guy, I'm not a born warrior, not a natural born fighting machine, whatever that is. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. I am this way, and I don't think it's possible to change. I used to ask myself, why do I have to change who I am? But then, if I didn't, it seemed like I was destined to always be at the mercy of anyone stronger than me, which, face it, is pretty much everyone in the world. The injustice of it all, it made me furious. But what could I do? So I decided to give it one last shot, and so I started doing research. And for the kids out there, this is how we used to do it, old school style. I don't mean I sat back, opened a bag of chips and started Googling, or waited until someone I was following tweeted about it. No, I mean I went to libraries, I read books that referred me to other libraries and other books, and eventually I read about this style called Wing Chun. They claimed it was devised by a woman to overcome a stronger attacker. That sounded pretty interesting to me. Now, I mentioned this because when I started, Wing Chun was not particularly well known or even that widely taught. As I've said in a previous video, when Mr. Yip Man passed away 42 years ago, Wing Chun Kung Fu was not even well known in Hong Kong. The situation is very different today, but by a great stroke of luck, in Australia, where I was living at the time, there were Wing Chun masters teaching. And even more fortunate for me, they were masters of what some people call internal Wing Chun. Whatever you call it, our focus is on effortless power. Equal emphasis on both parts. You have power, yes, but without muscular effort. Now this was something entirely new for me in my martial arts journey. And when I started in Wing Chun, I just had this feeling of elation. For once I could just be me. Just me. That was such a relief to me. To not feel that I had to transform into someone else. Someone I didn't want to be. I could just be me and learn to use my own body and its structures as it was. Not a refined, a sculpted, hardened or enhanced version of myself, but me, just as I was. I once asked Sifu Derek about how Mr. Yip Man used to teach, and he replied simply, custom-made Kung Fu. That is something he continued, tailoring teaching to the individual student. It means you have to take the time to assess what is each student's ability, their confidence level, how quickly can they absorb ideas. This is custom-made Kung Fu. Under this careful tuition, I came to discover that by using your mind, you can overcome what you may have previously thought of as your own limitations. And let me tell you, my mind was so full of self-imposed limitations. It used to imprison me in so many ways. But Wing Chun gave me a different way to look at the world and the problems that you encounter. It makes you rethink your assumptions about what you think you can do and what you can't do. Helps you to understand that your mind controls far, far more than you previously believed. And so, in this way, I say that Wing Chun came to save my life. Because when I was at my lowest, full of self-loathing, the weight of what had happened in the past made it impossible for me to see any future at all for myself. That's when training in Wing Chun helped me to find a way through those dark times. Because it reminded me that for every single one of us, no matter how our future paths look as though they're set in stone, they're not. No matter what your past was, you can have a different future. With our thoughts, we shape our world, they say. But it is true. I have seen this. I've lived this. Over the years, I've had the privilege of training many champions. Now, by champions, I don't mean cage fighters, which for some reason has come to represent the pinnacle of martial arts. No, the champions I have such respect for are not people who fight some guy in a cage, but rather some of my own students who battled with themselves, dealing with burdens such as the terrible effects of thalidomide poisoning or other serious physical setbacks. To those with deep mental scars and absolutely no self-belief, those people, they trained hard anyway. They showed faith and they backed someone that no one else was willing to, themselves. If you can believe in yourself when everyone in your life has said to you have no reason to, then in my opinion, you are a champion. Now, not to say that their journey was easy. I know firsthand how hard their journey along this path can be. If you want to train this internal Wing Chun, then you have to focus on structure, nothing else. It's a long, long road, and no one is going to be cheering you along the way. In fact, quite the opposite. Plenty are going to doubt you, some are going to mock you, but I always encourage my students to stay on the path. Keep training as hard as they can, no matter what others may think how our style may look ineffective or look weak. Fighting is about beating your opponent, not about impressing someone else. To train Wing Chun our way is to do less, not more. If it looks good, if it looks deadly, or if it just looks impressive, then I'm sorry, it's probably not us. Keep training hard, keep testing yourself, keep on believing in yourself. So that's my journey up to this point, and why with so few external trophies or markers, you could say that I've wasted my time. But as I've explained, quite the opposite. Wing Chun literally saved my life. Not through physical combat, but by freeing me from the prison that I'd created in my own mind. It allowed me to start life fresh. That's why I'm determined to keep going for the next 25 years at least, because there may be others out there like me that are looking for answers. But those answers may be getting harder to find today. As I said earlier, it used to be hard to find a Wing Chun school, but now they're kind of like Starbucks. There's almost one on every corner, sometimes driven by the same franchise, expansion-driven business model. Now to me, Wing Chun is like gold. Gold is very valuable, but it's also extremely malleable, so that a single ounce can be hammered into a sheet about 5 square meters. Now it's still gold, it's just spread incredibly thin. I think it's the same with Wing Chun, which seems to have spread everywhere these days. Students are keen to learn, there are lots of commercial schools keen to cash in on this. So Wing Chun is everywhere, or at least a spreadable version of it is. Now a quick Google or YouTube search is going to bring you thousands of results for Wing Chun schools, often taught by awesomely fierce looking instructors. Often they're all sweaty and mysteriously they have their shirts off, or at least their sleeves are ripped off. Man, they must get into a lot of fights. You know how many fights you have to get into before your actual sleeves get ripped off? Wow, I wouldn't want to mess with those guys. If you spend a lot of time building up your muscles, well, good for you. Good for you. But does it help you teach Wing Chun? I actually think it makes it harder for you. If you spend hours a day lifting weights, what you define as effortless is going to be very different from someone who has been too afraid to ever step inside a gym in their life. Your student. Now, let me be clear on this. Am I saying that you have to be physically weak to teach Wing Chun? No. Am I saying that I'm the only person who's teaching Wing Chun the correct way? Absolutely not. Sure, all martial arts evolve, and over time, things will be done differently. But generally in evolution, things go forwards, not backwards. So if you're a Wing Chun instructor, but your sole contribution to the practice of Wing Chun is just to practice it harder or tougher or just with more muscle, you're not really evolving Wing Chun. You're just creating Rex Kwon Do with centerline theory. Now bow to your sensei. To me, it is absolutely vital that the approach of custom-made Kung Fu is kept alive. I believe you must adapt to your student, not the other way around, so that students like me all those years ago can hear that important message. You don't need to be someone else. You don't need to hate yourself. You are fine just as you are. Just be yourself. You don't need to toughen up. If the whole world wants to put you down, but you somehow still find the strength to get up every day, then you don't need to toughen up. You're tough enough already. I hope that I can spend the next 25 years of my life sharing this that I've discovered through practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu. Beyond the fighting ability, beyond the self-confidence and awareness, I want you to realize that no matter what was taken from you before, there is still enormous potential inside you, and you can draw upon that to build the life that you want. I'll leave you with these words from Napoleon. He said, "The only conquests which are permanent and leave no regrets are our conquests over ourselves." I'm on this journey with you. Never give up.